In the realm of global law enforcement, corruption runs a precarious thread, undermining the very fabric of societal order and justice. This video navigates through 10 of the most corrupt police forces worldwide, revealing the depth of this grave issue and its repercussions. Number 1. Nigerian Police Force. The Nigerian Police Force, NPF, stands as a stark representation of entrenched corruption within the ranks of law enforcement agencies. Allegations of bribery, extortion, and embezzlement are common within this organization, and these illicit activities have a profound impact on the overall public perception of the Nigerian police force. Bribery is a significant aspect of the corruption narrative within the NPF. It's not uncommon for police officers to demand bribes at checkpoints, during patrols, or in police stations. The police often exploit the vulnerability of the Nigerian citizens, using the power of their uniform to induce fear and compliance. The Nigerian police force is also marred by widespread extortion. Officers, especially those in higher ranks, have been accused of demanding money from subordinates, who in turn exact this from the public. This vicious cycle of extortion creates a culture of corruption that permeates every level of the organization. Embezzlement of funds earmarked for the police force is another prevalent issue. Investigations have revealed instances where funds allocated for operational costs, personnel welfare, or infrastructure development are misappropriated by senior officers. This has led to poor working conditions for many officers and has further fueled corruption as officers seek alternative means to augment their income. The public trust in the Nigerian police force has been severely eroded due to these corruption issues. The police, instead of being viewed as protectors, are often seen as predators. This perception hampers effective policing and creates a gap between the police and the public. The Nigerian police force's corruption extends beyond monetary issues. There are instances of human rights abuses, with the infamous Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, accused of extrajudicial killings, torture, and other forms of abuse. While SARS was disbanded in 2020 following widespread protests, the culture of impunity within the police force remains a significant concern. Number 2. Haitian National Police. The Haitian National Police, HNP, is a law enforcement body that has been chronically plagued by corruption, significantly affecting its ability to provide safety and justice. This corruption is manifested through various forms, including bribery, drug trafficking, and a lack of accountability. Bribery is rampant within the HNP. Officers frequently solicit bribes from citizens for various reasons, such as avoiding traffic violations, expediting administrative procedures, or simply as a form of roadside extortion. This pervasive culture of bribery undermines the rule of law and fosters a lack of trust and respect for the police force among the public. Drug trafficking is another significant corruption issue within the HNP. Haiti, due to its geographical location, is a transshipment point for drugs, particularly cocaine, moving from South America to the United States and other countries. Some members of the Haitian National Police have been implicated in facilitating this drug trade. They allegedly provide protection for drug shipments, accept bribes from drug traffickers, and, in some cases, are directly involved in trafficking activities. This involvement not only contributes to the global drug problem but also undermines the integrity of the police force and the rule of law in Haiti. A lack of accountability further exacerbates the corruption within the HNP. Officers who engage in corrupt practices often do so with impunity, as the mechanisms for police oversight and punishment are weak or non-existent. This lack of accountability allows corruption to thrive and sends a message to both the police and the public that such behavior is tolerated. The HNP's corruption issues have serious implications for public safety and security. With police officers often more focused on their illicit activities, the force's ability to prevent and respond to crime is severely compromised. This situation leaves many Haitians feeling unsafe and unprotected, leading some to resort to vigilante justice. Corruption within the HNP also contributes to social and economic inequality in Haiti. The poor, who are less able to afford bribes, are often disproportionately targeted by corrupt officers and are more likely to suffer from police negligence or abuse. Furthermore, the resources lost to corruption could have been used to improve public services, including policing, thus benefiting the entire society. Efforts have been made to reform the HNP, and address its corruption issues. These include the establishment of an Inspectorate General to oversee the police, the implementation of a new code of conduct, and programs to train officers in human rights and ethical policing. However, these measures have had limited success, with corruption remaining a significant problem. The United Nations and other international actors have also been involved in efforts to reform the HNP. Despite these initiatives, the force's deep-rooted corruption issues remain a significant challenge. Sustainable progress likely requires a comprehensive approach that not only targets the police, but also addresses broader issues of governance, justice, and socio-economic inequality in Haiti. In sum, corruption within the Haitian National Police is a profound problem with far-reaching implications. It undermines public trust, contributes to insecurity and inequality, and hampers efforts to establish a stable and democratic society in Haiti. Despite various reform efforts, corruption persists, indicating the need for a more robust and comprehensive approach to address this pervasive issue. Number 3. Kenya Police Service. The Kenya Police Service, an integral part of the country's law enforcement system, has unfortunately been marred by persistent corruption allegations. This corruption comes in several forms, including bribery, nepotism, embezzlement, and human rights abuses, which have severe implications for the country's security, rule of law, and public trust in the police service. Bribery is a significant and widespread issue within the Kenya Police Service. It's not uncommon for officers to demand bribes during routine traffic stops, at police checkpoints, or even in the course of criminal investigations. Such illicit transactions undermine the rule of law and foster a culture within the police service where personal gain outweighs public duty. Nepotism is another aspect of corruption within the Kenya Police Service. There have been numerous allegations of favoritism in recruitment, promotions, and postings, with family ties or personal connections often taking precedence over merit. This nepotism breeds resentment, low morale, and inefficiency within the police service. The corruption within the Kenya Police Service has severe implications. It undermines the rule of law, with officers who are supposed to uphold the law frequently breaking it. It erodes public trust in the police, with many Kenyans viewing the police service with suspicion and fear. It also hampers the police service's effectiveness, with corruption diverting resources and attention away from the core duty of maintaining law and order. Efforts to reform the Kenya Police Service and tackle its corruption problem have been ongoing. These include initiatives to improve police accountability, enhance transparency in recruitment and promotions, and increase officers' pay to reduce the incentive for bribery. However, these reforms have met with limited success, and corruption remains a significant challenge. Addressing corruption within the Kenya Police Service likely requires a multifaceted approach. This would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Kenya's political and judicial systems, enhance public participation in oversight, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 4. Afghanistan National Police. The Afghanistan National Police, ANP, is one of the primary law enforcement agencies in Afghanistan, and it has been perpetually embroiled in issues of corruption. The forms of corruption observed within the ANP include bribery, drug trafficking, nepotism, and abuse of power, all contributing to a state of disorder and a pervasive sense of insecurity among the populace. Bribery within the ANP is extensive, with officers often demanding money from civilians at checkpoints, during routine traffic stops, or while carrying out investigations. In some instances, officers have been known to fabricate charges to extort money, a practice that not only undermines the rule of law, but also fuels public mistrust in the police force. Drug trafficking is another critical issue, with Afghanistan being one of the world's leading producers of opium. Some members of the ANP have been implicated in the drug trade, either by facilitating its transportation, providing protection for poppy farmers, or participating directly in the production and sale of narcotics. This involvement in drug trafficking not only tarnishes the reputation of the police force, but also aids in sustaining the country's illicit drug economy. Nepotism and favoritism are rife within the ranks of the ANP. Promotions and lucrative postings are often determined not by merit, but by personal or familial relationships, tribal affiliations, or the ability to pay bribes. This culture of nepotism undermines morale, breeds inefficiency, and erodes the professional standards of the police force. Abuse of power is also a common form of corruption within the ANP. Police officers have been accused of extrajudicial killings, torture, illegal detention, and other human rights abuses. Often, these abuses are carried out with impunity, reflecting a lack of accountability and further damaging public trust in the police. The widespread corruption within the ANP has severe implications. It undermines the rule of law, creates a culture of impunity, and erodes public trust in the police. It also hinders the police force's effectiveness, with corruption diverting resources and attention away from maintaining law and order. The international community, particularly NATO and the United States, has made significant efforts to reform the ANP and tackle its corruption problem. These have included training programs, efforts to enhance police accountability, and initiatives to improve officers' pay and working conditions. However, these reforms have had limited success, with corruption remaining a significant challenge. Addressing corruption within the ANP likely requires a comprehensive approach. This approach would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Afghanistan's political and judicial systems, address the underlying socioeconomic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 5. Venezuela's Bolivarian National Police. The Bolivarian National Police, PNB of Venezuela, is a law enforcement agency that has been heavily criticized for its high levels of corruption. The corruption within the PNB manifests in numerous ways, including bribery, involvement in organized crime, and abuse of power, leading to severe implications for the country's security, rule of law, and public trust in the institution. Bribery is a pervasive issue within the PNB. Officers often solicit bribes from civilians for reasons as trivial as avoiding minor traffic infractions to as serious as securing release from detention. This culture of bribery fosters a sense of impunity and erodes the rule of law, as justice becomes a commodity that can be bought and sold. Involvement in organized crime is another grave concern within the PNB. Venezuela's economic crisis and soaring crime rates have created fertile ground for criminal organizations, some of which reportedly have ties with corrupt police officers. There have been allegations of police officers participating in drug trafficking, extortion rackets, and even kidnapping rings. This involvement in criminal activities not only undermines the police's integrity, but also fuels the cycle of crime and violence in the country. Abuse of power is also prevalent within the PNB. There have been numerous instances of officers using excessive force, engaging in arbitrary detention, and committing other human rights abuses. These abuses often go unpunished, reflecting a lack of accountability and further damaging the public's trust in the police force. The corruption within the PNB has profound implications. It undermines the rule of law, as police officers who are supposed to uphold the law are often the ones breaking it. It erodes public trust in the police, with many Venezuelans viewing the police with fear and suspicion. It also hampers the police's effectiveness, as corruption and involvement in crime distract from the core duty of maintaining law and order. Efforts to reform the PNB and address its corruption problem have been made, such as introducing new codes of conduct, implementing oversight mechanisms, and improving training. However, these reforms have faced numerous obstacles, including a lack of political will, resource constraints, and the deep-rooted nature of corruption within the force. Addressing corruption within the PNB likely requires a comprehensive approach. This would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Venezuela's political and judicial systems, address the underlying socio-economic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 6. Iraq Police Force. The Iraq Police Force, a crucial component of the country's law enforcement system, has been persistently marred by issues of corruption. Manifestations of corruption within the force include bribery, embezzlement, nepotism, and involvement in organized crime, all of which contribute to the undermining of public trust and security in Iraq. Bribery is a rampant problem within the Iraq Police Force. Officers frequently solicit bribes from citizens in exchange for services that should be free, such as filing a police report or for looking the other way when a law is broken. This entrenched culture of bribery not only compromises the integrity of the police force, but also fosters public distrust and cynicism. Embezzlement of funds is another significant corruption issue. Funds allocated for operational costs, equipment, and personnel welfare are often misappropriated by senior officers. This practice results in poor working conditions for many officers and a lack of necessary resources, thereby hampering the force's overall effectiveness and pushing officers to engage in corrupt activities to supplement their income. Nepotism and favoritism are widespread within the Iraq police force. Promotions, assignments, and access to training opportunities are often determined based on personal or tribal affiliations rather than merit. This unfair practice breeds resentment and inefficiency and diminishes the professional standards of the police force. Involvement in organized crime is also a critical concern. Some police officers have been implicated in activities such as kidnapping, extortion, and even sectarian violence. Such involvement not only tarnishes the reputation of the police force, but also fuels the cycle of violence and instability in Iraq. The corruption within the Iraq police force has grave implications. It undermines the rule of law, erodes public trust in the police, and compromises the force's effectiveness in maintaining law and order. Furthermore, it exacerbates the country's already challenging security situation and hinders efforts to build a stable and democratic society. Efforts have been made to reform the Iraq police force and address its corruption issues. These have included initiatives to improve police training, enhance transparency and accountability, and increase officers' pay to reduce the incentive for bribery. However, these reforms have met with limited success, and corruption remains a significant challenge. Addressing corruption within the Iraq police force likely requires a multifaceted approach. This approach would involve not only police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Iraq's political and judicial systems, address the underlying socio-economic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 7. Somalia Police Force. The Somalia Police Force, SPF, a key law enforcement body in Somalia, is beleaguered by serious issues of corruption. These corruption practices, which include bribery, extortion, nepotism, and involvement in organized crime, significantly impede the SPF's ability to effectively maintain law and order and foster public trust in the institution. Bribery is a widespread problem within the SPF. It's not uncommon for police officers to demand bribes from citizens for services that are supposed to be free, such as filing a police report or conducting investigations. Officers often also accept bribes to overlook offenses, a practice that not only undermines the rule of law, but also fosters a sense of impunity and public distrust in the police force. Extortion is another form of corruption frequently encountered within the SPF. Officers often exploit their authority to coerce money or favors from citizens, using threats or actual violence. This abuse of power breeds fear and resentment among the public, further eroding trust in the police force. Nepotism and favoritism are also prevalent within the SPF. Promotions, assignments, and access to training opportunities are often determined based on clan affiliations or personal connections rather than merit. This practice undermines the professionalism and efficiency of the police force and perpetuates divisions within its ranks. Involvement in organized crime is another grave concern. Given Somalia's status as a fragile state with high levels of insecurity, some police officers have been implicated in activities such as smuggling, kidnapping for ransom, and even involvement in militant groups. Such illicit activities not only tarnish the reputation of the police force, but also contribute to the cycle of violence and instability in the country. The corruption within the SPF has profound implications. It undermines the rule of law, erodes public trust, and hampers the police force's effectiveness in maintaining security. Furthermore, it exacerbates the country's already fragile state, hindering efforts to establish stability and governance. Efforts to reform the SPF and tackle its corruption problem have been ongoing, often with the support of international partners. These efforts have included initiatives to improve police training, enhance transparency and accountability, and increase officers' pay to reduce the incentive for corruption. However, these reforms have faced significant challenges, including limited resources, weak institutions, and the complex clan dynamics that permeate Somali society. Addressing corruption within the SPF requires a comprehensive, multifaceted approach. This would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Somalia's political and judicial systems, address the underlying socioeconomic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 8. Sudan Police Force. The Sudan Police Force, an essential part of Sudan's law enforcement structure, has been persistently plagued by allegations of corruption. The manifestations of this corruption include bribery, nepotism, embezzlement, and human rights abuses. These practices undermine the rule of law, hinder effective policing, and erode public trust in the police force. Bribery is a significant issue within the Sudan Police Force. Officers are frequently accused of soliciting bribes for overlooking legal transgressions or for performing basic services, such as filing police reports. This culture of bribery undermines the rule of law and fosters a sense of impunity among the police force. Nepotism is another form of corruption commonly found within the Sudan Police Force. Appointments and promotions are often based on familial or tribal affiliations rather than merit, which undermines the professionalism and effectiveness of the police force. This practice also breeds resentment among officers and can contribute to divisions within the force. Embezzlement of police funds is another notable concern. There have been allegations of senior officers misappropriating funds intended for police operations, equipment, or personnel welfare. This diversion of resources leads to poor working conditions for many officers and a lack of necessary resources, thereby hampering the police force's effectiveness and potentially pushing officers towards corruption to supplement their income. Human rights abuses committed by police officers also constitute a form of corruption. There have been numerous reports of police officers engaging in excessive use of force, arbitrary arrests, and other human rights violations. These actions not only violate the rights of citizens, but also deepen public mistrust in the police force. The corruption within the Sudan Police Force has severe implications. It undermines the rule of law and erodes public trust in the police. Furthermore, it hampers the police force's effectiveness and ability to maintain law and order. The repercussions of this corruption are felt deeply by the public, who often view the police with suspicion and fear. Efforts to reform the Sudan Police Force and tackle its corruption problem have been made. These initiatives include improving police training, enhancing transparency in recruitment and promotions, and increasing officers' salaries to reduce the incentive for bribery. However, these reforms have often been met with resistance, and corruption continues to be a significant challenge. Addressing corruption within the Sudan Police Force likely requires a multifaceted approach. This would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Sudan's political and judicial systems, address the underlying socioeconomic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law. Number 9. North Korea's People's Security. The Ministry of People's Security in North Korea is a law enforcement agency that has been associated with high levels of corruption. Due to the secretive nature of the North Korean regime, it's difficult to get a comprehensive understanding of the corruption within the organization. However, reports from defectors and international observers suggest that bribery, abuse of power, and human rights violations are common practices. Bribery is a pervasive issue within the People's Security. Police officers are often reported to solicit bribes from citizens for overlooking minor infractions or for providing services that should be freely available. This culture of bribery significantly undermines the rule of law and fosters a sense of impunity among officers. Abuse of power is another major concern. There are frequent reports of officers using their position to extort money or favors from citizens, often under threat of punishment or imprisonment. These practices not only violate the rights of citizens, but also further erode public trust in the institution. Human rights abuses are also commonly associated with the People's Security. These abuses include arbitrary arrests, torture, and inhumane conditions in detention facilities. Such actions have severe consequences, including creating a climate of fear and contributing to the pervasive culture of repression within the country. The corruption within the People's Security has serious implications. It undermines the rule of law, erodes public trust, and hampers the effectiveness of the police force. Furthermore, it contributes to the broader patterns of human rights abuses and authoritarian control in North Korea. Efforts to address corruption within the people's security are complicated by the closed nature of North Korea's political system. International sanctions and diplomatic pressure have had limited impact on the regime's behavior, and internal reform efforts are virtually non-existent. Addressing corruption within the people's security likely requires a broader shift in North Korea's political and social landscape. This could involve increased political openness, greater respect for human rights, and the development of robust institutions to hold the police and other public officials accountable. Number 10. Mexico's municipal, state, and federal police. Mexico's municipal, state, and federal police forces have been mired in corruption for decades. These law enforcement bodies have been widely criticized for their involvement in bribery, collusion with criminal organizations, abuse of power, and other forms of corruption, all of which undermine public safety and trust. Bribery is rampant across all levels of Mexican police forces. It's not unusual for officers to solicit bribes in exchange for overlooking crimes or violations. This culture of bribery not only weakens the rule of law, but also fosters a sense of impunity among officers. Collusion with criminal organizations is another significant issue. Given Mexico's ongoing struggle with drug cartels and organized crime, some police officers and even entire units have been accused of cooperating with these groups, either through active participation in criminal activities or passive non-interference. This collusion not only tarnishes the reputation of the police forces, but also exacerbates the country's security challenges. Abuse of power, including excessive use of force and human rights abuses, is another concern within Mexico's police forces. There have been numerous instances of police brutality, arbitrary detentions, and even extrajudicial killings. Such actions contribute to a climate of fear and distrust among the public, and further undermine the rule of law. The corruption within Mexico's police forces has far-reaching implications. It erodes public trust in the police, hampers the effectiveness of law enforcement, and contributes to the country's high levels of crime and violence. Furthermore, it undermines Mexico's democratic governance and hinders efforts to improve the rule of law. Efforts to reform Mexico's police forces and address their corruption issues have been ongoing. These have included initiatives to improve police training, enhance transparency and accountability, and increase officers' salaries to reduce the incentive for bribery. However, these reforms have often been met with resistance, and corruption remains a significant challenge. Addressing corruption within Mexico's police forces likely requires a multifaceted approach. This would involve not just police-specific reforms, but also broader efforts to tackle corruption within Mexico's political and judicial systems, address the socio-economic issues that fuel corruption, and promote a societal culture of integrity and respect for the rule of law.